Mr. Hitchens, you are likely the world's most charming, roguish, and enlightened atheist, and I love you for that. But as a Sufi Muslim, I'm very ruffled by the title of your book. Of all the titles that you likely had at your disposal, did you have to settle for the literal negation of Allahu Akbar?
Yes. I thought so. Thank you for that question. Thank you. No, it's a very good question, and I'm glad. I wanted to come back to it. Why? Yeah. As I've said, I think that all religions are wrong in the same way, in that they privilege faith over reason, but they're not all equally bad in the same way all the time. I mean, if I'd been writing in the 1930s, I would certainly have said that the Roman Catholic Church was the most dangerous religion in the world because of its open alliance with fascism and anti-Semitism, which the damage from that our culture has never recovered from and never will. But at the moment, it's very clear to me that the most toxic form that religion takes is the Islamic form. The horrible idea of wanting to end up with Sharia, with a religion-governed state, a state of religious law, and that the best means of getting there is jihad, holy war, and that Muslims have a special right to feel aggrieved enough to demand this, I think is absolute obscene wickedness, and I think their religion is nonsense. And
in its
entirety. The idea of God speaks to some illiterate merchant warlord in Arabia, and he's able to write this down perfectly, and it contains the answers to all human. Don't waste my time. It's bullshit.
But you're saying the same about it.
Also, that God speaks. The Archangel Gabriel speaks only Arabic, it seems.
I just want to say, in retrospect, you were very civil, actually. I don't know what I was thinking.
This is
the same characterization of all religions?
Well, actually, no, because remember, Islam makes one special claim for itself. All religions claim to be revealed truth. They all are founded by divine revelation. But Islam rather dangerously says, ours is the last and final one. There can't be any more after this. This is God's last word. Now, that's straight away a temptation to violence and intolerance. And if you note, it's a temptation they seem quite willing to fall for.
I mean, do you actually believe in your Muslim faith? Do you believe that Muhammad split the moon in two? Do you believe that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, for example? I pay you the compliment of assuming that you don't.
No, I do. I believe in miracles.
You believe that?
Yes.
You believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a winged horse?
Yes, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. Let's assume I'm wrong, Richard. I'm wrong.
Let's
assume I'm wrong.
The debate isn't really one between Christians and Muslims. It's more between the secular society and Muslims, which I thought was an interesting observation.
Yes.
But what do you think the rules of the game should be in a modern liberal democracy? Between these different groups who have very, very different belief systems?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a very profoundly important question. I think the rules of the game are that you should be allowed to believe anything you like, and of course that's right, but that you shouldn't impose your beliefs on other people. And so any creed that thinks it has the right to say, not only do we believe this, but you've got to believe it too, or else, I mean, that is a very, very serious violation of everything that democracy stands for.
So let's take some examples. Burqa bans, they have a burqa ban in France. You wouldn't be in favour of that?
No, I'm not in favour of a burqa ban. It seems to me to be a violation of individual liberty. I mean, when I see a woman in a full burqa with just a slit, I feel personally offended. But it's an important part of what I believe, that what I feel personally is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what I feel. Nobody else should abide by what I feel. And that applies, of course, on the other side as well. What I notice coming to this centre of world religions, what a lot of hatred religion fosters. I mean, I'm an atheist, and I'm rather gentle. I don't hate people, but it seems to me that I'm hearing hate on all sides, and it seems to me all to do with religion.
I hate atheists because atheists don't care if somebody fornicates in the middle of the street. They don't care if they're women go bouncing around on TV topless. It makes no difference to them. They don't believe in anything. If you don't believe in a set rule, and you believe that a constitution can change, and you can amend the rules as they go along, and you don't believe in God's rule, then what law do you have? You just have man-made laws.
I realized I was in the company of someone who has willingly bought into fundamentalist dogma. But if we've all got to live together, it's not going to be helped if there are people of very, very strong faith who simply know they're right and are not amenable to argument, because there's somebody out there who's just as faithful as you and has his faith just as strong as yours, which is opposite to yours.
You see, the problem is, Richard, I think that you have fear. You know that this party of occupying Muslim lands and polluting society with these evil ideas that are around, it's not going to last forever. There will always be the soldiers of Allah there to give the response to this. So we also want the same thing. All we want is that we want the non-Muslims at this point off the lands of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the lands of Muhammad, we want the kuffar out of it.
Do you want Islam to take over the rest of the world?
Of course I want it to, and it will. So my advice is to clean up your show at home, take your forces off our lands, correct yourselves, fix your society, all right? Fix your women.
Fix your women, that's not my business, that's my women's business.
No, it is your business. It is your business. When you take the women and dress them like whores on the street.
I don't dress women, they dress themselves.
No, but you allow it as a norm to let the women go on the street dressed like this. What's going on with your society?
But I'm interested in religion and the effect that it has on people's minds, and I'm worried about it.
And we're very worried about you. What's going on with the stealing, with the theft? It's out of control.
So we're standing on the spot. This is the spot where Theo van Gogh was assassinated.
This is exactly the spot.
He was a Dutch filmmaker. He made a 10-minute film. It was deeply offensive to Muslims. Lots of people think that free speech goes right up to this point, and then when you're talking about religion, when you're talking about the Prophet, all bets are off.
It goes both ways, freedom of speech.
It goes both ways, but the people who actually usually do the killing for it wind up on the Muslim side. Do you think that says something about the different cultures?
I don't want to have the image of the Muslims, you know, if they don't like something you say, they kill you, because it's not.
It was a noisy crowd outside the Danish embassy in London as speakers condemned the cartoons portraying the Prophet Muhammad.
The demonstrators set off from Hyde Park, bringing much of central London to a standstill. Their hatred focused on Salman Rushdie and his book.
The mullahs pressed home their message in thousands of mosques. Salman Rushdie must be killed.
See, Salman Rushdie was there to provoke, insult, and he did it intentionally, right? I'm not...
But should you die for that?
No. Well, I mean, like, you know, that was... You know, it's easy for you to say things kind of in black and white. They're more complex than that. They're actually, you know, there's emotions and passions and philosophy involved and all that stuff.
You know,
and then
all you gotta say is, it's wrong for someone to have to suffer a death threat for writing a book.
Well, hang on.
But apparently it's more complicated than that.
Well, it is, because, well, no, yeah, but I mean, Western...
Well, then we'll never see eye to eye.
Bill, the truth.
But you don't see that there's a fundamental hypocrisy of you asking for the right to dissent and somebody else getting a death threat?
No, because my dissent is to stop the madness.
I'm strapped up across my chest, belt attached, deeply satisfied with the plan I had.
I like my hat.
It's good.
Yeah?
You look good too.
I think I do.
Yes.
I think I might adopt this look.
Yes.
There is a lot of tension in the last 5 years or so. Is Islam a threat to Dutch values?
Islam is preaching above all peace. Peace, peace and peace.
من خلال قول المصطفى صلوات الله وسلامه عليه لا تقوم الساعة حتى يقاتل المسلمون اليهود فيقتلونهم.
The name Islam means peace.
And yet it is involved in a lot of war and violence.
Yeah, it's just all politics.
Nothing to do with religion?
No.
No?
No, sir. It's a political.
It's politics?
It seems to be a lot of passages that say the infidel is not the equal of the believer. The infidel will die in hell. Don't feel bad about hating the infidel.
No.
No? Boy, I've got bad information.
Yes, you have. I think so.
You think that means...
No.
No? I'm wrong about everything.
the way I perceive things in the Quran is not about killing infidels or
But you have read it
or
in there.
homosexuals. Of course I read the Quran.
And you've read those passages.
Yeah, I've read those
and what
passages.
did you think when you read
No,
them?
but I explained those passages within the time in which they emerged.
But that's not how people read holy books. People don't read holy books and go,
But-
well, that was good for then. People read
No,
holy
but I
books and
think-
go, this is the word of God, it's forever.
No, I don't
That's
agree.
how most people do
No,
it.
no, I don't agree.
I just don't buy it that these guys are in this state of denial. I think they're just in a state of denial to an outsider. They will not admit anything is wrong with their culture to an outsider.
Is when you talk about faith, you don't look at what faith teaches. First and foremost, what faith teaches is that, listen, you're a human being, so respect your fellow human beings. And I think that's an important point that you don't want to discuss.
What is the penalty for
And that is the thing that
apostasy?
you fail to discuss, and that's why you've got those prejudicial views about faith. With
What is the
respect.
penalty for apostasy? What do you teach the children will happen to them if they give up the Muslim faith?
Well, let's bring the debate back into Britain.
What is the
and
penalty
we are
for
talking
apostasy?
about-
I tell you what we will do, because we could go down this road for a very long way.
Professor Lachman said, if a child is born into a family given a certain religion, when that child growing up basically knows more about their religion, and as they grow up they learn about other religions and choose, and they can.
Are you saying that the fact that you're brought up within a religious faith doesn't prevent you being open-minded or adopting any religion or none?
Not at all. It does not prevent me from being open to other religions. I, in fact, have come to this country and chose to put the veil on. I have come to this country without a veil on.
So not so very wicked is the view.
But what is the penalty for apostasy? What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
To be honest, I cannot back that point up.
Dr. Muqaddam, what is the penalty for apostasy?
And, before
we keep coming down this apostasy.
Well,
give us a quick answer on what is the penalty for apostasy, and we'll come and do it.
You very well know, if it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostasy is dealt with the death penalty.
Thank you. That's all I want to hear.
But what's the relevance between what happens in an Islamic country and Great Britain? I fail to see the connection.
Okay, I'm going to bring some more voice.
Give me your argument against that is your critique of Islam.
Islam means submission to the will of Allah. A doctrine that requires from the individual to become a slave, in my view, is bad. Islam limits the imagination to what you can find in the Quran and to following the example of the Prophet Muhammad. I think that's bad, and that's what keeps people in the Islamic world backward. Islam treats women, at least says, subordinates women to men, is obsessed with obedience, calls for the matter of gaze for adulterers, and is therefore very violent and inhuman. All this is in the Quran, all this is in the Hadith, and anywhere that Islamic Sharia or Islamic rule is implemented, you see that these things are carried out.
Surely there are many versions of Islam, like there are many versions of Christianity, of Judaism, of all major religions. You're presenting it as one thing, and it's just obviously not.
Islam as a faith, as a doctrine, defined by what's in the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad, and unreformed, unchallenged, is a monolith.
I could point to other things in other holy books that are equally offensive.
The other holy books, the Old Testament, the Bible, have become almost obsolete. There are no Christians who want to have the Bible replace any constitution in Western society. The Pope has actually apologized.
Whoa. You live in the United States of America. This is a country where evangelical Christianity has ascended to the highest ranks of power, where conservative social values drawn and justified by the Bible are imposed on people every single day.
I think you're exaggerating.
They shoot abortion doctors in the United States of America. Homophobia is rampant.
When abortion doctors in the United States were shot, the federal government reacted to it by going after the perpetrators, putting them on trial and jailing them. When in Iran, two men went after a woman and a man holding hands and shot them, they were acquitted by the Supreme Court. That is the core difference. Never confuse Islamic Sharia and the Muslims who really mean it with those extremist Christians who live in the United States. Extremist Christians in the United States or any other Western society face the rule of law and are dealt with accordingly.
Let's talk about the intervention to bring democracy, quote unquote, increasingly in what many people see as in an almost Islamophobic context.
There's no Islamophobia. It's a myth. But let's go.
There's no Islamophobia?
No.
Anywhere in the world?
No. I mean...
Is there anti-Semitism?
It's different. Islam is not a
racism?
race. Sometimes. We're all racists. Racism is a universal trait. So is anti-Semitism, by the way. But I want us not to confuse a set of beliefs such as Islam with ethnicity, such as the hatred against Jews just because they are Jews, or against blacks just because they are black, or against gays just because it's something you can't do anything about. Whereas Islam is simply a set of beliefs, and it's not Islamophobic to say Islam is incompatible with liberal democracy. It's not Islamophobic to say, to point to those people who use the Quran and the Hadith to conduct war and to say this is being done in the name of your religion. Do something about it. That's not Islamophobic. That's fair.
North American Muslim.
In America, you can come with no penny, nothing, no money, and you can become very wealthy. Tell me which Muslim country.
Is there a
you can do
school
that.
where they teach you these American cliches? Is it part of your application process that you have to?
No,
I'm sorry. I'm so upset that I'm losing my cards here. I can't believe you just said that.
I read Alexis de Tocqueville, and I read about democracy, and I lived in countries that had no democracy, that had no founding fathers, that have not invented or could not resolve. So I don't find myself in the same luxury as you do. You grew up in freedom, and you can spit on freedom because you don't know what it is not to have freedom.
Hijab is not just a piece of cloth that we put on our head. I was actually encouraged by other people and relatives to take it off and not wear it. So it was my choice to put it on, and it was my decision to practice this part of my faith.
Well, my mother was very much against me wearing the hijab because my parents are both Muslim, but they're from Iran. And over there, wearing the hijab is something that is enforced among everybody. It is a political tool. Why put my religious beliefs out there and possibly be harmed?
It's unfortunate that people have this negative opinion about the hijab, people who think that the hijab oppresses women, but I mean, I hope to be an example that I'm not an oppressed woman who wears the hijab.
I had to keep explaining that this is not about trying to prove what a good Muslim I am. Whether you wear hijab or not is between you and God. It is no one's place to judge. I don't care if you're a stripper at night and you wear hijab during the day. That is your business. You wear hijab on your terms, honey, and that's what I do.
I do identify myself as a feminist, and so I do write a lot about social issues and cultural issues that transcend all these barriers. And the fact that I'm speaking up about these things in a hijab, it breaks that stereotype too, that we're, you know, like the introverted, domesticated, submissive kind of women, when no, we have a lot of outspoken, very strong, independent females who do practice this part of the faith.
Islam through the Quran gives women a lot of rights, and I need that to be heard. I need that to everyone to understand and hear that. I mean, I am a young Muslim woman myself. I sit before you, I have a voice, and I can speak to you, and I can look you in the eye, and I do have my rights. And when I go to Iran, I'm actually Iranian as well, so when I go to Iran, I also have my rights. I need it to be heard that the Quran, Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us our rights. People, individuals in countries, and people who represent our religion may not, and they may do the wrong thing to sort of stand in front and show us religion and preach us religion, but Islam does.
All right, we're going to take that as a comment, a very passionate one at that. Okay.
Well, no. No, we're not. No, we're not going to take it as a comment. I can see your face, I can see your hair, and I can see you sitting in an audience with young gentlemen. Don't you tell me you can do any of that in Iran.
I can, though.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you cannot.
I can. In Iran, in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where I have been, my hair would be out. My hair would be out because my veil would be little. My hair would be, it may be covered a little bit, but just like in the Bible, in the letter to the Corinthians, it says to cover your head, to be modest.
It's a shame she spoiled what could have been a perfectly good statement.
All right, okay, I'm sorry.
But my modesty would be there. I mean, you've been talking about these cheap jokes and things throughout this whole conversation, but you're the only one making the cheap comments.
You insult your sisters in Tehran who are being beaten,
and
raped every day when you say that they have their rights in the Islamic Republic. It's an insult to the women of Iran.
I do not. Astaghfirullah.
وليد استغرب أن أقوم كمذيعة بوصف مجتمع السعودي بأنه يعني يتعرض إلى غسيل دماء، وهذا شيء غير مستغرب بتاتا يا أستاذ وليد أو دكتور وليد، طالما أننا منذ سن السابعة تقريبا أو السادسة في سن حياتنا المدرسية الأول الابتدائي وحتى الثانوية العامة ثالث ثانوي عندما نبلغ 18 عاما، وحتى بعد أن ندخل الجامعة ونحن نتلقى ونتلقى ونتلقى ونحفظ ونحفظ ونحفظ، ومن يجرؤ منا ويناقش ويسأل أو يتساءل يوصم باستغفر الله، عليك تستغفر الله، قد الآن تقوم بما يدخلك جهنم وأنتم من تخوفون الناس بجهنم فجلبتموها لهم على الأرض، جلبتم الجحيم للناس، قمتم بالطمس ومنع الكتب للمدارس الفكرية المختلفة، منعتم العقل من أن يتحرك ومن أن يفكر ومن أن يقارن ومن أن يختار، وهو العقل الذي كرمه الخالق بأن يكون له رأي في اختيار مصيره في بين جنة ونار. ربنا أكرم الإنسان بأن جعله مختارا يختار مصيره في هذه الحياة وفي الآخرة له العاقبة، وإنما العمل بالنية، والنية الصالحة علمنا إياها المعلم الأكبر بأنها هي محرك كل تصرفاتنا. سيدي نعم، نحن مغسولة أدمغتنا يوميا من خلال المدارس، من خلال مدارس تحفيظ القرآن التي نطالب دائما بأن لا تكون تحفيظا بقدر ما تكون تفهيما وتفسيرا ومعرفة لمفاتيح اللغة العربية التي هي سر الخوض في القرآن الكريم وفهم أسراره. كفانا تلقيا كالببغاءات. نعم نحن مغسولة أدمغتنا إلا من رحم ربي.
المرأة نريد ثقافتها، نريد فكرها، نريد مشاركتها في تنمية المجتمع، لكن الذي تصر على أن لابد تخرج في الشاشات هي تصر أن يظهر الجسد. لماذا نحن نظلم المرأة ونقول لا نستطيع نستفيد منها إلا بإظهارها أمام الناس بهذه الطريقة؟ كل العلماء على خلافهم في قضية الحجاب متفقون على أن إذا كان يعني كشف وجه المرأة هذه له تبعات أخرى مثل الفتنة مثل قضايا أخرى لا يجيزونه. أمر آخر، لما أجازوا كشف وجه المرأة وضعوا ضوابط، حتى الشيخ الألباني ذكروا أن الوجه والكفين فقط، بالضبط. لا أن تظهر النحر ولا أن تظهر الشعر، صح. ولا أن تظهر أيضا بالمكياج وبالمزينات. هذه ذكروها العلماء واتفقوا عليها.
سيدي عندما أظهر أنا على الشاشة وأطالب بحقي بأن أناقش وأقوم بدوري في هذا المجال المهني، وأطالب بأن يظهر وجهي وهو هويتي التي لا أقبل بأي مجال من المجالات أن تلغى هذه الهوية، من هؤلاء الذين يقررون لي ماذا يجب أن أكون عليه؟ لماذا تعاملوني كسيدة فأنني ناقصة الأهلية وهنالك دائما صوتا ذكوريا يقرر لي ما يجب أن أكون عليه؟ أنا سيدي رب العالمين سواني معك في الواجبات وفي العقاب وفي الثواب. عندما تصوم أنا أصوم، عندما تصلي أنا أصلي، عندما تسرق تقطع يدك وعندما أسرق تقطع يدي. وهذا دليل أكبر وأعظم على أنني لست ناقصة الأهلية وأعي ماذا أفعل وأعرف كيف أحترم نفسي.
ماذا شعرت عندما قرأت عن النقاش الذي دار في مجلس الشورى السعودي حول مشاركة المرأة السعودية أو ظهور المرأة السعودية في الإعلام؟
ماذا شعرت؟ شعور بالظلم والتجني طبعا.
قضية الضرب دي شبهة خطيرة جدا.
نعم.
واحدة معنا مولانا.
أقول إن الله كرم المرأة بهذه العقوبة، عقوبة الضرب. كيف؟
كرمها بالضرب؟
اي والله.
مش معقول.
كيف؟ قال نبينا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم: ولا تضرب الوجه
الله
ولا تقبح. شوف كرمها. وإذا ضرب لا يزيد عن 10، وإذا ضرب لا يكسر عظما ولا يقطع لحما ولا يكسر سنا ولا يفقع عينا. أدب عند الضرب. كل هذا تكريم للمرأة، هي تحتاج إلى تأديب.
a fanatical idea of mass mobilization, a cult of the leader, a cult of death, fortunately in some ways because it's self-destructive. It's just also true of fascism. It's irrational, in other words, as well as extremely violent. And a cult of worship of violence, for its own sake. Of course, without even mentioning it, a fanatical hatred of the Jewish people, and an attempt at the impossible, at the recreation of a lost, glorious past. In this case, the Caliphate. Well, these parallels are good enough, I think, to say that it's not vulgar to draw them.
Have you ever met a jihadi? Well, you're about to. It's easier to find them in London than in New York. In fact, earlier in the decade, London took on a nickname, Londonistan, the origins of which were obvious. A brand of radical Islam seemed to flourish here. At the center of the movement was the infamous Finsbury Park Mosque. Its Imam, Abu Hamza al-Masri, openly preached jihad and played host to terrorists ranging from the missing 9/11 hijacker, Zacarias Moussawi, to the shoe bomber, Richard Reed. Britain has cracked down on some of the activity. The Finsbury Park Mosque is closed and Abu Hamza al-Masri is imprisoned, yet jihadis continue to preach openly in mosques and meeting houses here. One is Anjem Choudary, an activist who has praised both the 9/11 attacks in New York and the 7/7 bombings in London 5 years ago. He has called for the imposition of Sharia law in Britain. I thought it would be worth your meeting him. Anjem Choudary joins me now. You know, people just listening to you, the first thing I think they would think, at least in the United States, and I think in many parts of the world, is, gosh, this guy doesn't sound like a jihadi. Do you think of yourself as British?
I'm a Muslim first and a Muslim last. If I'm in Britain and I have a passport, then that's a travel document. If I was in America, I would have a travel document with an American, institution on it. At the end of the day, you know, our identity is defined by our thoughts and our ideas. My ideology is Islam. It's something I believe in, I live by, and I want to struggle for, and I'm willing to sacrifice for. So, you know, I am determined and I'm defined by what I believe, not where I was born or my lineage or, you know, or what the government would have me labeled as. I live in the world which has been created by God. Wherever I am, I will propagate Islam. Who said that Britain belongs to David Cameron? Britain belongs to God. I will implement the Sharia here if I can. If I go to Saudi Arabia, I'll do the same there. If I'm in Pakistan, the same there.
Isn't it fair to say, though, it is much easier for you to espouse your views in an open democracy? If you were to say what you're saying in Iran, they would kill you. If you were to say it in Saudi Arabia, they would at the very least imprison you. Here you get to be on television.
I don't believe so. I believe, in fact, America and Britain and much of the West is looking for an alternative. You can see from the credit crunch to the MPs and the.
You think the solution to the credit crunch is Islam, is Sharia law?
Yeah. I mean, you can talk to me about anything about the economy in the West. I can give you an Islamic alternative.
All right.
What Michael Adebayo and the other accused murderer, Michael Adebowale, had in common are the teachings of the London-based Islamic preacher, Anjem Choudary.
Hello, good afternoon. Hi there. How's everybody? I can't shake your hand, I'm afraid. It's just etiquette, men and women. That's I can shake his hand, though.
Right, okay. PJ from Sunday Night.
Hi, how you doing?
Take a seat. This is Anjem Choudary leading a rally in 2007. That's Adebowale behind him. He and the other alleged killer, Adebowale, were both Christians who converted to Islam.
My brothers, remain in your ranks.
Here's Adebowale leading a rally in 2009.
Allah says they are worse than cattle.
He's telling this crowd that non-Muslims are worse than pigs and cattle. He lived here in this flat, a few kilometres from Woolwich.
Yeah, I remember him as a very peaceful man, a very calm man, impeccable character, very good, Muslim, very keen to attend demonstrations, processions, etc., very keen to study about Islam. I think he was a very good Muslim, in fact.
Do you still believe he's a good Muslim now?
I believe that he is a good Muslim, absolutely.
Chowdhury's extreme views are finding an audience among impressionable young followers.
No alcohol allowed. Pour out, get him to pour it out.
Some of whom have policed London streets, enforcing Sharia law.
We Muslims, we patrol the area, forbidding evil.
Alcohol is evil. No alcohol, yes?
Pornography will be banned, alcohol will be banned, gambling will be banned.
What if people like the system that they live under?
They can like it as much as they want. When we have authority and we implement the Sharia, you will have no choice but to live under the Sharia one day in Australia. You may like the corruption of man-made law, but but the Sharia, and obviously Allah knows what's better for all of us, and the Sharia will be implemented.
So you believe that Australia will one day be under Sharia law?
Of course, I'm certain about it. I believe that the flag of Islam will fly over the building, the Parliament building in Australia, as much as it will in America and in Moscow and in all parts of the world. The whole world will one day be under the authority of the Muslims, implementing the divine law of Islam.
So everyone will be happier under Sharia law?
They may not be happy, but we will have the Sharia one day.
Sharia for America! Sharia for America! Sharia for America!
Tommy Robinson, a former football hooligan who's found his calling, leading the far-right English Defence League.
I bet I've had more death threats and attacks. Anjem Choudhury's never even had a black eye or bloody nose. Do you know what I mean? He walks around freely. I don't. So...
You say you've got something in common with the man?
Well, I want freedom, he wants Sharia.
You actually believe it's a war?
No, I know it's a war.
A proper war?
They've launched a war. A jihad was launched years ago. There's a worldwide jihad going on. And it's here, it's on our shores.
Yeah, ideology, it's got no place. Yeah, it's got no place, bruv. And what you
Sharia
law's got no place in this country.
His crusade against radical Islam has made him a marked man.
I heard. Come on, Clown. Where are you running away from? Because I know what you like, bruv. You have about 100 you in a minute. You f***ing little chief. You f***ing chief. Prick. You see? That is Islam.
Well, I'll tell you what keeps me up at night. I've had 4 official Osman warnings. I've had terrorists wanting to kill me. I've had threats to decapitate my children. In the last probably 2 weeks, I've had 200 death threats to kill me, murder me, rape my wife, murder my mum. Everything keeps me up at night.
Are you scared of Islam?
I'm petrified of it. Terrified of it. Sharia law, oppressing women, homophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-democratic, anti-freedom. Can't get much more violent, extreme.
Something's got to change. If it's just left the way it is, this country is heading... We're sleepwalking into an oblivion. And everyone needs to wake up to the threat that lays ahead for the next generation of our kids.
What's happening now with Lee Rigby is the catalyst for it. People have had enough. The British public have had enough.
Was Lee Rigby the enemy, in your eyes?
I think the biggest enemies and terrorists in the world today are the American government and the British and their own allies, like the Australians, for the crimes that they're committing.
Was Lee Rigby the enemy?
I think that Lee Rigby was a British soldier. He was part of the British, if you like, army. At the current time, the British government and their own army are committing atrocities in Muslim countries. And then they have allies like the Australians and the Americans. As far as the Muslims around the world are concerned, they are committing crimes. You know, we believe that, the whole of mankind has been created to worship God. The Messenger Muhammad ﷺ was sent for the whole of mankind. Every prophet before was sent to his own people. So we believe the Sharia will govern the whole world. In fact, one day we've been informed as a prophecy that will be the case. In the east of the east and the west of the west, the Muslims will have authority.
Oh, it's coming. Simple. It's coming. I'll tell you straight. You've got Islam in your country, it's coming.
Thank you for joining me. We're just outside Luton Magistrates Court at the moment. This gentleman with me here has been very respectful, very polite. He's a Muslim, come from Luton, born and bred in Luton. Yeah. Are you from Berry Park?
Round that side, yeah.
Round the corner, yeah? So this guy's a Muslim. He come up to me earlier and we had a little discussion. So, do you want to just...
Yeah, I was just saying, Paul said a few times on camera, on YouTube, that Muslims plan on bringing Sharia law here.
Yeah.
Muslims plan on, providing their own law and not living under democracy.
Yeah.
And I just simply said to Paul, yeah, this is definitely true. It's in our religion that Sharia law will take over the whole world.
Yeah.
So when he's saying this is not wrong, that we want this, we believe this, we've come here, and we've come here to obviously provide our own law, live under our own law in someone else's country,
yeah.
If you might put it. You were born here, you like the way people are living now.
Yeah, sure.
It's not going to stay like that for too long. That's what I want to say.
You can't. I take the attitude that you can't blame a dog for barking, so to speak. So you are a Muslim. You believe in the Islamic faith. And you believe I mean, your religion is based on the Sharia. There's no doubt about that, is there?
Not only that, it's not that. It's just because Sharia came and now it's gone. No, Sharia's not around no more that much. But the problem is, in Islam, in the religion, it says that Sharia will take over the whole world eventually. So
yeah, I have read that. I've read those verses.
So as Muslims, if we believe in this part and that part, we're obviously going to believe in that part as well. It's not pick and choose. We believe in all of it.
So do you believe England or the United Kingdom is going to be a Muslim Sharia state eventually?
100 billion%. 100%.
And you want that to happen?
Yeah, definitely more than anything. I don't want nothing more than that. That's how much.
As a Christian, I do find that horrifying. But you can imagine if I was in Saudi Arabia and I said, look.
Yeah, I understand it from your point. If I was in another country and a bunch of Christians came over and they're like, you know what, Christianity is going to take over, and then they got proof in their scripture, and this is what they all believe. Obviously, I'd be scared, I'd be horrified. But all I can say is, just sit back and watch the show and enjoy it, because it's going to happen.
There's only certain things in the Quran that scholars agree are concrete, like the concept of God, afterlife, things like that. But beyond that, there is a wide range of interpretation, which is why there is a history that not many people look at, and that's part of the problem, that nobody's actually looked at the history of debate within Islam about every sort of aspect that can come to mind.
I disagree with that. The reason why I disagree with it, it would be more accurate, Ziba, if you said the scholars that you find attractive say that. But there are a bunch of scholars with a great number of following in Islam, all of them are self-appointed, by the way, because there's no hierarchy, there's no seminary of Islam, except a University of Al-Azhar, and we know the products of Al-Azhar. But there are scholars like Bin Laden who say we have to take.
He's not a scholar by anyone's
he
measure.
has the greatest following. He has the greatest following. The Islamic Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna. When you look at the Sunni Islam, when you look at Ayatollah Khomeini in the 20th century, the most influential guy of Shia Islam, another self-appointed scholar, you have all of it. Sheikh bin Baz, he has the greatest following. Sheikh al-Qaradawi. Maybe these are individuals that are not attractive to you, but then it would be more accurate if you stated that. They are attractive to many Muslims, not thousands, but in the millions. And what they say, and that's why they're influential, is they challenge every single Muslim individual. Are you a true Muslim? If you are a true Muslim, you live by what the Quran dictates, you follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad.
Their interpretation,
and those scholars who insist on that are far more influential, far more powerful than you soft-spoken, wonderful, cuddly scholars.
Well,
I am here to ask you a simple question. I know that we portray Islam and all Muslims as bad, but there's 1.8 billion Muslim followers of Islam. We have 8 million plus Muslim Americans in this country, and I don't see them represented here. But my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? How can we ever end this war? The jihadist ideology that you talk about, it's an ideology. How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Great question. I am so glad you're here, and I am so glad you brought that up because it gives us an opportunity to answer. We were not here to bash Muslims. You were the one who brought up the issue about most Muslims, not us. And since you brought it up, allow me to elaborate with my answer. There are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. Of course, not all of them are radicals. The majority of them are peaceful people. The radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25%, according to all intelligence services around the world. That leaves 75% of them peaceful people. But when you look at 15 to 25% of the world Muslim population, you're looking at 180 million to 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. That is as big as the United States. So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died, almost 14 million in concentration camps, 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. On September 11th in the United States, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took 19 hijackers, 19 radicals to bring America down to its knees, destroy the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 Americans that day. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. So for all our powers of reasons and us talking about moderate and peaceful Muslims, I'm glad you're here. But where are the others speaking out? And since you are the only Muslim representative,
all I'm saying is that liberal principles like freedom of speech, freedom to practice any religion you want without fear of violence, freedom to leave a religion, equality for women, equality for minorities, including homosexuals. These are liberal principles that liberals applaud for, but then when you say in the Muslim world this is what's lacking, then they get upset.
Yeah. Well, liberals have really failed on the topic of theocracy. They'll criticize white theocracy. They'll criticize Christians. They'll still get agitated over the abortion clinic bombing that happened in 1984. But when you want to talk about the treatment of women and homosexuals and free thinkers and public intellectuals in the Muslim world, I would argue that liberals have failed us. And the crucial point of confusion, thank you.
Thank God you're here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the crucial point of confusion is that we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
Right.
And that is it's intellectually ridiculous. Even it gets
so hold on, are
with
you
racism.
the person who understands the officially codified doctrine of Islam? You're the interpreter of that, so you can say, well,
I'm actually well educated on this topic.
I'm asking you. So you're saying if I criticize you're saying that Islamophobia is not a real thing. That if you're critical of something...
Well, it's not a real thing when we do it.
Right.
Well, no,
it really isn't.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people. And that's a problem.
Big of you.
But
why are you so hostile about this concept?
It's gross. It's racist.
It's not. But it's so nuts.
It's like saying those stateless, shifty Jew.
You're not listening to what we are saying.
You guys are saying if you want to be liberals, believe in liberal principles like freedom of speech, like we are endowed by our forefathers with an inalienable rights, like all men are created equal.
Ben, we have to be able to criticize bad ideas. And
of course we do. No liberal doesn't want to criticize bad ideas.
But Islam at this moment is the motherlode of bad ideas.
Jesus.
So we have
That's
ideas
just a fact.
like blasphemy.
It
it's an ugly thing.
Apostasy.
It is
one basic liberal principle is tolerance.
Let me unpack it.
But not for intolerance.
The people who would actually believe and enact that you murder somebody if they believe Islam is not the majority of Muslims at all.
Okay,
is it?
Let me break this down for you. Okay, we have, as you say, we have 1.5, 1.6 billion Muslims. Now,
second biggest religion in the world, a quarter.
Well, Ben, let me unpack this. Let me unpack this for you.
Please do.
We have just imagine some concentric circles here. You have at the center, you have jihadists. These are people who wake up in the morning wanting to kill apostates, wanting to die trying. They believe in paradise. They believe in martyrdom. Outside of them, we have Islamists. These are people who are just as convinced of martyrdom and paradise and wanting to foist their religion on the rest of humanity, but they want to work within the system. They're not going to blow themselves up on a bus. They want to change governments. They want to use democracy against itself. Those two circles arguably are 20% of the Muslim world. Okay, this is not the fringe of the fringe.
What are you basing that research on?
A bunch of poll results that we can talk about. So to give you one point of contact, 78% of British Muslims think that the Danish cartoonist should have been prosecuted. 78%. So I'm being conservative when I roll this back to 20%. But outside of that circle, you have conservative Muslims who can honestly look at ISIS and say that does not represent us, that we're horrified by that, but they hold views about human rights and about women, about homosexuals that are deeply troubling. So these are not Islamists, they're not jihadists, but
those views are anathema to ours.
But they also keep women and homosexuals immiserated in these cultures, and we have to empower the true reformers in the Muslim world to change it. And lying about the link between doctrine and behavior is not going to do that.
But the Great Divide,
Now, the question isn't whether Islam itself is violent. It's what its adherents believe, because that's what they act upon. There's plenty of violent material in the Old and New Testaments. Hey, I'm an Orthodox Jew. I read the Old Testament a lot. But believers in those particular texts are not currently ramming airliners into towers or beheading journalists or mutilating female genitalia. So, let's examine the question. Is radicalism in the Muslim world a tiny minority phenomenon? So to answer that question, we need to define our terms. We're really not talking about people who are active terrorists. Radical beliefs are a lot broader than terrorists, and anybody who argues otherwise is being naive or foolish or disingenuous. But terrorists draw their moral, financial, and religious support from those who are not terrorists themselves. So, who are the radicals? Ben Affleck actually was right on this. There are approximately 1.6 billion Muslims on the planet, and they're from 49 different countries in terms of where they have a majority. All the population stats, by the way, are from Pew Research as of 2011. Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim country. It's got almost 205 million Muslims living there. According to one 2009 poll, it showed almost 50% of Indonesians actually support strict Sharia law, not just in Indonesia, but in a lot of countries, and 70% blamed the United States, Israel, or somebody else for 9/11. So, you make that calculation, it's about 143 million people who are radicalized. You scared yet? We're just getting started. Okay, Egypt, 80 million Muslims. According to that same 2009 poll, it showed that 65% want strict Sharia law in every Islamic country, and almost 70% said that they had positive or mixed feelings about bin Laden. So that's 55.2 million more radicals. Pakistan has almost 179 million Muslims. 76%, just over 3/4, want strict Sharia law in all Islamic countries. That is another 135.4 million radicals. Bangladesh, not a country you tend to think of as Muslim, but there are 149 million Muslims living there. As of 2013, just over a quarter said suicide bombings or targeting of civilians was sometimes justified. Another 82% want Sharia to be the official law of the country, and 2/3 said honor killings of women can sometimes be justified. Honor killings, 2/3. It's 121.9 million radicals. Nigeria, 75.7 million Muslims live there. 71% favor Sharia law. That's 53.7 million people. Iran, 74.8 million Muslims. 83% favor implementation of Sharia law as of last year. So that's 62.1 million more radicals. Turkey has 74.7 million Muslims. And 32%, this is a moderate Muslim country, probably the most moderate Muslim country, 32% said honor killings of women could actually be justified sometimes. So that's 23.9 million radical Muslims in our moderate ally, Turkey. Morocco, 32.4 million Muslims live there. Just over 3/4 support Sharia law. That's 24.6 million radical Muslims in Morocco. Iraq, 31.1 million Muslims live there. 78% say honor killings of women can sometimes be justified. That amounts to 24.3 million Muslim radicals. Afghanistan, 24 million people. A huge majority, 76%, support at least occasionally, or just once in a while, honor killings of women. 99% actually want Sharia to be the law of the land. So it's like a Cuban election over there. 24 million radical Muslims over in Afghanistan. Jordan, smaller Muslim country, 6.4 million Muslims. Right now, Hamas is enjoying like a 60% approval rating. So 3.8 million radical Muslims in Jordan, which is, again, a moderate country. Palestinian areas, right? We're sending literally hundreds of millions of dollars to the Palestinian areas. We are, the American taxpayers. 4.3 million Muslims live in the Palestinian areas. 78% of those had positive or mixed feelings about bin Laden. 89% support terror attacks on our ally, Israel. 89% support Sharia law. We should give them a state, folks. That's 3.83 million radical Muslims. How about in the West? Okay, let's take it to France. France, 4.7 million Muslims live there. A 2007 poll showed 35% of French Muslims said suicide bombings could sometimes be justified. It's 1.6 million radical Muslims living in France. Great Britain, 2.8 million Muslims living there. 78% wanted cartoonists of Muhammad legally prosecuted. So we're talking about 2.2 million radical Muslims in Great Britain. How about here in the United States? Well, we have a very moderate Muslim population. We do. 2.6 million Muslims live here, according to Pew Research. 13% said violence against civilians can be justified. 19% said they were either favorable toward al-Qaeda or just didn't know. You know, because who knows, really? That's almost 500,000 radical Muslims here in the United States. Here is the total of the countries that we've gone through just now. 680,030,000. 680,030,000 radical Muslims. And that's out of a total population in those countries of 942.4 million Muslims total. And it seems fair to assume that similar proportions of people in countries like, say, like Algeria, Syria, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Tunisia, Somalia, and Libya are also radicalized. And if they are, then, well, we're above 800 million Muslims who are radicalized. More than half the Muslims on earth. That's not a minority, that's now a majority, and that's still not even surveying hundreds of millions of Muslims in other countries. In other words, the myth of the tiny radical Muslim minority is just that. It's a myth. And, unfortunately, it's a myth that's going to get a lot of civilized people killed.
While Bill Maher is wrong on any number of things, and may in fact be wrong in his commentary on Islam, I don't think I've ever seen him or any of the other people who are accused of it actually say that all 1.5 billion Muslims are the problem. As a matter of fact, most of them tend to go out of their way on occasion because this is a frequent criticism.
But they associate like 20-30%, and that's a
because that's what the numbers are. That's what the numbers are. If you look at the statistics for how many Muslims are in favor of Sharia law, how many Muslims thinks that apostates should be killed in specific countries, it varies from country to country. You know, it's worse in Jordan and Egypt than it is in Israel, etc. Those are the numbers. Now, are they inaccurately representing statistics? Probably. It happens all the time. I wouldn't expect, I think almost anybody's going to end up misrepresenting statistics. There's no easy way to talk about this. And the problem, hang on. Part of the problem here is that you have a whole bunch of people who are identifying with the same label and the same holy book, and this applies to Islam and it applies to Christianity, who have different views. And if they're not taking steps to distinguish themselves from each other, then they don't get to complain that they got a little paint on them when we're painting the problem. The brush may be a little broad on occasion. We should definitely work to make sure the brush isn't any broader than it needs to be. But also, these members of religious groups that sanction particular religious or support particular religious identities need to do a better job of distinguishing themselves.
I agree with you completely, but when the President of the United States condemns actions of ISIS and how they killed the journalists, which I condemn equally as much, and everybody in the Middle East would equally condemn.
Everybody in the Middle East would equally condemn?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I just find that to be the most patently absurd. You're exaggerating.
I don't want to say everybody. I would say the vast majority. Let me retract.
I'd be happier with that as your personal estimation than you trying to plant a flag on everybody.
But I'm just saying that this is part of the general. I mean, because you have to admit, nationalism and patriotism is equally dangerous as any dogmatic religion is.
No, I don't actually have to admit.
At the end of the day, dogmatism is dogmatism.
I absolutely don't have to admit that.
Why?
Because there's a difference. There's a difference between patriotism and jingoism, and what we're talking about.
But at the end of the day, you, Matt, and me, Mohammed, we are human beings, citizens of this planet. We share one planet. At the end of the day, if we're going to devise the whole problem I have with religion is its divisiveness.
I agree that religion is divisive. I also agree that the current state that we have with different nations is divisive, but not all divisiveness is equal. And so when you make a statement that nationalism and patriotism are just as bad as religious dogma, that is something that I do not accept.
I think because hyper-nationalism, hyper-patriotism.
That's why I said there's a distinction between patriotism and jingoism is the hyper-nationalism that would be dogmatic, that would be a corollary to.
How so? You're saying it's not as bad. How so? How is
liking your country and being proud of your country and your heritage does not necessarily mean that you are willing to kill for it or die for it. Being patriotic does not mean that you are therefore under any kind of dogmatic locked in position to remain that way. Okay? This is why I drew a distinction between patriotism and jingoism. Jingoism is the hyper-patriotism where you are basically devoted to the state in the same way that you would be to a god.
Yeah.
That...
No.
I think this is just semantics.
But yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that you shouldn't be proud of your heritage. I'm saying that when that pride comes at the expense of other cultures, of other heritage, that's the dogmatism I'm talking about, and that which is no different from religion.
And they just put up the credits. I apologize. We have run out of time completely for the show.
My name is Jumana Imad Musa Ahmed Al-Bahri, and I'm a student here at UCSD. I was reading your literature. I found that much more interesting than the talk. And I found some interesting things about the MSA, which is an organization that's very active on campus, and it is hosting our annual Hitler Youth Week. You should come out to those events. If you could clarify the connection between the MSA and jihad terrorist networks, because...
Yeah, will you condemn Hamas here and now?
I'm sorry, what?
Will you condemn Hamas?
Would I condemn Hamas?
As a terrorist genocidal organization?
Are you asking me to put myself on a cross?
So you won't. I actually have had this experience many times. You didn't read the pamphlet because the pamphlet is chapter and verse. The main connection is that the MSA is part of the Muslim Brotherhood network as revealed in the documents.
I don't think you understood what I meant by that. I meant if I say something, I'm sure that I will be arrested for reasons of Homeland Security. So if you could please just answer my question.
If you condemn Hamas, Homeland Security will arrest you.
If I support Hamas, because your question forces me to condemn Hamas. If I support Hamas, I look really bad.
If you don't condemn Hamas, obviously you support it. Case closed. I have had this experience, I had this experience at UC Santa Barbara where there were 50 members of the Muslim Students Association sitting right in the rows there. And throughout my hour talk, I kept asking them, will you condemn Hezbollah and Hamas? And none of them would. And then when the question period came, the president of the Muslim Students Association was the first person to ask questions. And I said, before you start, will you condemn Hezbollah? And he said, well, that question is too complicated for a yes-no answer. So I said, okay, I'll put it to you this way. I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and showing everybody what's here. And you're wearing a terrorist neckerchief.
If you understood...
you didn't hear the lady.
Could you please answer my question?
You don't get to make a speech. Yes, sir.
The National Muslim Students Association was created by the Muslim Brotherhood. If you want to disclose all your funding and what your affiliation means, that's fine with me. In the pamphlet we've distributed, the Muslim Students Association on this campus attacked a Muslim who was condemning terrorism and obstructed his speech. Now, why would you do that if you weren't sympathetic to the terrorists? You can explain it to me and I'll listen, and if you have a reasonable answer, I'll accept it.
No one has ever done that.
And there are no homosexuals in Iran. I know this lie.
I'm kind of a hard man. You made me cry because you're a hateful person.
You tell me why you're wearing a terrorist headscarf?
I'm not wearing a terrorist.
What's the boo?
That's a cultural symbol of a people. Do not call it terrorist headscarf.
It is not terrorist. It's not.
100%.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
This is
Stand up and when there's someone else out there with you, tell that person we'll sit you in the debate.
Here goes
You
the
are
professor.
wrong. That is wrong. You cannot attack a
Did your,
person on a
did your
cultural
mother
appearance.
teach you
That is wrong.
any manners, huh? Yeah, my mother taught me manners. We're about to, the cult here can't handle any kind of dialogue.
We asked if you have a question.
So you all, wait a second, I mean, this is a learning, what they call a teaching moment. We saw a professor pretend, we saw a professor who was the faculty advisor for Students for Justice in Palestine pretend to be a rational person, inviting me to a civil discussion about these issues. And the minute somebody says something that he disagrees with, he explodes like a maniac and storms out of the building. 100% of the Palestinian people have voted for two terrorist parties, two genocidal terrorist parties. Neither the PLO nor Hamas, both of them are sworn to the destruction of the Jewish state. That is genocide right there. Hamas has it written into its charter. These are people who kill their own children by strapping bombs to them and sending them to blow up other little children. The Palestinian people support terrorism. 85%, according to an Arab poll taken on the West Bank, supported the gunman who went into a school library and slaughtered Jewish students studying. Kids just like you. 85% of Palestinians support that. That scarf is a terrorist, genocidal, Hitlerian scarf. And it's not a cultural symbol at all. It's a symbol created by a monster named Yasser Arafat who stole from the Palestinians themselves $35 billion and put it in a Swiss bank account. Yasser Arafat died with $35 billion in funds earmarked for Palestinian refugees and contributed mainly by the United States and Israel, put it in his Swiss bank account. He was a murderer, he was a terrorist, and if Palestinians had any Palestinian, I should say, with sense, would know that Arafat is their enemy, and that's who created that scarf. That is the symbol, it's Arafat's symbol.
كتير خاصة يعني بتميز عن الأمهات اللي ما عندهم أبناء.
أكيد يعني
كيف تتعامل مع الواقع؟
بمشي إذا مشيت مجتمع أو شيء قعدت بمجتمع بحس التكريم والعزة.
نفتخر لأنه ابني شهيد. مستعد كل حياتي أقدمها مش بس شهاد. مستعد يكون أولادي كلهم شهداء. وجوزي كل شهاد وأنا إن شاء الله ما بموت إلا شهيدة.
واحد صغير قدم 2 و3 ويا ريت عندي بعده.
والحمد لله كتر خير الله، الحمد لله يا عمي على هالنعمة اللي الله أنعم علينا بالشهادة.
ترى گلم شما اسمت چیه؟
علی.
علی جان با کی اومدی شما؟
با پدرم.
امروز چه روزیه؟
روز قدس.
خب اون وقت برای چی اومدی؟
اومدیم ما مرگ بر آمریکا کنیم.
Now, it is known for Muslims around the world that whenever a Muslim is in need, for example, if he's being attacked or his land is being occupied or his honor is being violated, then it is a responsibility for us to defend them. So, you know, if a Muslim travels abroad, anywhere in the world, to defend his fellow brethren, that this is a good deed in Islam. Nobody can doubt this. Nobody can doubt that, yes.
So it's a good deed. It's a good deed to do. You also said it's a noble deed.
Well, of course, you know, if we're talking about defending, because remember, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric and there's a lot of discrimination and vilification against Muslims. We are talking about a Muslim who is being attacked, for example, by Bashar al-Assad, or for example, in Chechnya by the Russians, or even in China, in the Xinjiang province. These people are being oppressed. Their land has been taken. They are being killed. Now, any sane, rational person would say that to defend them, to stand with them side by side, to make sure that their life is protected is a noble deed, surely.
So you would encourage this person to go?
Well, I don't encourage people, as I say, to go anywhere in the world, because if I thought it was better to go abroad...
That's encouragement, isn't it? To say that what you're thinking to do is a noble thing.
Look, if I thought it was better to go abroad, then surely I would not be sitting in England. I would be abroad. Yeah. So I believe I feel that we can fulfill our responsibility wherever we are.
But talk about the covenant. You're accepting the rules and the laws of the countries you live in. I mean,
no, who said that?
You're talking about the covenant.
Yeah, but
I mean,
this is according to Islam, not according to the law.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was according to Danish and British law, of course, which say that you cannot.
We don't care about Danish and British law. We care about Islamic law.
You don't care about Danish.
No, as a Muslim, we don't care about British and Islamic law.
All Muslims?
A Muslim is the one who submits to the Sharia, the revelation, and therefore he must only accept what Allah and His Messenger say.
Just to be clear, Denmark by law forbids people to travel to Syria and fight, and Iraq and fight. Britain do.
Yeah.
You don't accept this?
We don't accept any laws. You see, I mean, Denmark have banned halal meat. Denmark are thinking about banning the burqa. Denmark are the ones, you know, who insult the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we don't accept your laws. Quite frankly, those laws can go to hell. We only abide by the laws of Islam. Now, obviously, as a Muslim, we can travel anywhere in the world. Why is it that the Danes and the Brits, their governments, are actively pursuing a crusade, in fact, against Bashar al-Assad? They're even supporting the FSA, for example, militarily, militarily and logistically. And yet, when their own citizens respond to that rhetoric and they go abroad, they're becoming citizenless.
No, of course, I understand that, and that's a fair point. I'm just making another point, that you're not accepting that these people are breaking the law. And
they're not breaking the law. They're not obliged to abide by any laws apart from the laws of Islam. Yes, absolutely. And we believe one day the Sharia will come to Denmark.
Okay, let's take that a little later. These pictures that we are seeing here are the methods used by ISIS, who claim that they are fighting a jihad in Iraq and Syria. This is a recent killing of captured Iraqi policemen. Several were handcuffed, shot in the back. This is a civilian here, next picture, being captured and shot in the back. Is shooting a person handcuffed in the back, one of them were obviously a civilian, is that a good deed in Islam?
Look, I don't know the reality.
If you're fighting,
I don't know the reality. In general, as Muslims, nobody will target anyone innocent in any war. For example, women or children, or those people who are not fighting against you, they will never be targeted. Now, I'm not going to comment on photographs, which I have not verified, and I don't know what.
Let's talk about Islam. This is why you're here. I'll show you another clip about what you think they're fighting for in Iraq and Syria. This is from a Syrian city captured by ISIS. They've established what they call a caliphate. This is what you think should be established also in the whole world, ruled by Sharia. This is a person we see on a clip being punished for stealing. Let's see what happens. We'll stop the clip here because it's totally horrible what happens. His hand is being cut off. This is the punishment for stealing according to Sharia. Do you approve this kind of punishment?
You know, if the Sharia is implemented, it is the most perfect system in the whole world. I'm coming on to your question.
Are you?
I'm coming on to your question, yeah. The Sharia ensures the basic needs of all citizens are met. For your information, in 1,302 years of the Sharia, less than 200 hands were ever cut. We eradicated theft. Cutting the hand of the thief is definitely divine law that I agree with. But first of all, provide the basic needs for the people. Make sure they're educated. Give them the social and economic justice of Islam. After that, all of the hudud will be implemented, all of the penal code. From what I understand, this particular individual, I'm not sure if it's this clip, but he actually wanted his hand to be cut because he had stolen and he wanted the punishment in this life to avoid the punishment in the hereafter. I think this is something that people don't understand. Unless you have that relationship with God and you want His paradise, you will really never understand this.
Mr. Chaudhry?
Yeah.
This guy, a simple thief. If he was a thief, if he was a thief, we don't know.
Well, you don't know, do you? This is the whole point.
He wanted to have his hand cut.
From what I understand, this particular individual, he asked for the penal code to be implemented. I don't know if it's the same individual, but I know that there is a clip around with this. Yeah.
So you support this kind of punishment?
Of course I do. I believe that adulterers should be stoned to death. I believe that we should cut the hand of the thief. I believe the Sharia should be implemented in Denmark. You know, maybe we should change the Christian, Borg to Muslim Borg one day, to have the flag of Islam flying over the parliament in Denmark. Right. I think this would be very nice.
Okay. What would it mean? I mean, let's fantasize a bit about this, about Denmark or
I think
Britain.
a lot of your questions are fantasy.
Well, do you think so? Yeah. I mean, I'm not the one saying that Denmark will be ruled by the flag of Islam.
No, that's reality.
That's
reality. That's not fantasy. That's reality.
It will.
But many of your questions are fantasy.
It's reality.
It's reality.
Denmark will be ruled.
The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Allah showed me the east of the east, the west of the west, and the authority of my nation was of the whole of it. So that includes China and Denmark and all other nations.
Okay,
yes,
let's see what would happen to people who insult Muhammad. Last week in one of your lectures, one of the people represented had served prison time for talking about killing people who insult the Prophet Muhammad. Do you agree that people should be killed for insulting the Prophet Muhammad?
You know, it's not about what I think. The point is that in Islam, when you're living under the Sharia, when you have a Sharia court which tries people, definitely there's capital punishment for this. But it's not a question of taking the law into your own hands. I don't believe, for example, I should be walking in Denmark. If I see someone steal, then I go and chop his hand off. Rather, this is the job of the state. And this will be implemented, for your information, when all of the education, the social and economic justice of Islam is implemented. After that, nobody will insult any of the prophets. You know, the irony is... Wait a second. The irony is that Denmark is supposedly a Christian country. But who are the ones who are defending the honor of Jesus?
I'm asking you if they do insult the Prophet.
Under the Sharia, that would have capital punishment. Under the Sharia, that would have capital punishment.
Okay, just to be sure. Okay, you agree, of course, that you don't represent Muslims or Islam at all.
You know, Islam. That's very clever of you. The fact is, I don't represent the Muslims. I never claim to represent the Muslims, and no person can represent all of the Muslims. Rather, we try to represent the Islamic viewpoint.
Well, you talk about Islam in a very certain way. Islam does mean this, and Islam
Let me tell you one thing. I put a challenge out to any Muslim so-called scholar or imam out there in Denmark to prove that even one statement of mine is outside of the Quran or the tradition of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, the sad thing is this: people grow up in the West. They are secularized. If you go to college and university in places like Denmark or Britain, I'm not surprised. But if you go to the Muslim world, if you go to places like Indonesia or Pakistan or anywhere in the Muslim world, and you ask them about what I'm saying, they will agree 100% because they know about Islam much more. You know, if you're secularized, definitely there are people here who will bow down to the king of Denmark. Are they still Muslims?
So what you're saying is that, well, sorry, Denmark or Britain will never be ruled by Islam.
Oh, it will be ruled by Islam, yes, it will
by all these Muslims who embrace democracy, embrace freedom.
By Muslims who believe in Sharia, who abide by it, and who want justice and they want beauty for the people in Denmark. You know, I believe that Sharia is better for mankind.
Do you agree that...
Surely it's a noble thing to share it with.
Do you agree that you're totally marginalized among Muslims?
No, I believe that today we live in a very strange time. The Prophet said Islam started as something very strange. One day it will become strange. Paradise is for the strangers. I believe that we are ghuraba nowadays, strangers, definitely.
Okay, last question is, you don't accept democracy and freedom and human rights, you say quite clearly, and you have, I mean, you have my respect for being so frank about things. You're now in Denmark. You know, we're quite fond of, you know, human rights, democracy and freedom. What is it that these things are creating that's so wrong? These values that we love, what is that they're creating that you abhor, that you dislike?
Well, first of all, they're based upon sovereignty belonging to man. And because sovereignty belongs to man, they change every day. I mean, you can see in Britain how they run roughshod, for example, over freedom of expression, freedom of belief. And even in Denmark, you know, how is it that you believe in freedom, and yet the Muslims cannot express their freedom? They cannot have their own halal meat. They just about had one mosque built recently. I mean, what kind of freedom are we talking about?
They just had a mosque built.
Your freedom is according to the whims and desires of your prime ministers and your kings. We're talking about a divine law which is unchangeable. This is a big difference when sovereignty belongs to God.
Okay, last question. Would you rather live in a country that say that we actually like freedom, human rights and democracy? Denmark? Britain? Or would you rather live in a caliphate in Iraq or Syria under ISIS?
Well, that's a no-brainer. I'd rather live under the Khilafah anywhere in the world, an Islamic State. If there was an Islamic State actually established, it hasn't been established yet, I would take my family there without any kind of hesitation.
They have one in Syria right now.
No, they don't. They're fighting and they're trying to stabilize the situation. Then they're not actually able to provide security and welfare for the people. But when this becomes stabilized anywhere in the world, I think Muslims will rush to it from all over the world, not just from Britain.
Okay. So when there is one there ruled by Sharia, you are leaving?
I would love to live anywhere by the Sharia, but hopefully it will come to Denmark as well. So maybe I'll come to Denmark. You never know.
Thanks for coming.
Dear friends, my name is Işık Abla. I am a former Muslim, and my Facebook post earlier went viral. And the reason is because people wanna know the truth in America now. They have been fed with lies for so long and for so radically. I am going to use the word radically. And it is so wrong. And every American citizen needs to know what kind of danger their families are facing, what kind of danger they are facing, and what kind of country, if you don't stand up, you are going to leave your children and to your grandchildren. And this is not fair, folks. And I want to talk to you today. Listen, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And I am one of those foolish things. Take me as a fool, but listen to me. Give ear to me, because this is about your life. This is about your children's life. This is about your safety. America is in danger because of radical Islam. Listen, there are several types of Islam and several types of radical jihad. And I want you to give me your ears, please, please, I'm begging you. There's legal jihad. It is happening right now in the United States. They want to bring the Sharia law. Look at, search on Google, because media is not telling you the truth. Because most of the media is taken by Saudi Arabia. And most of the colleges are getting fed with money after money from Muslim countries. You need to listen to me, folks. This is about your future. This is about your children's future. This is about your country. Do I feel more about your country than you? Why don't you wake up, and why don't you listen to the truth? And listen to me. And there are this legal jihad, Sharia law came to Great Britain, England. They have Sharia law right now. Muslims go to their own court, and they are trying to do this in the United States. Google it, you will find it. And I am telling you, there's another political jihad, media jihad, educational jihad. They are sending Muslim students to Harvard, Yale, Princeton. And I was part of that jihad. I paid for students' tuitions 23 years ago for them to go to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. And this is what is happening right now in the United States of America. I am calling every American citizen to understand, is there any peace in Islam? I want to laugh. How long are you going to look around since September 11 and look around and look all these people that are killing innocent people, and look at their backgrounds? Okay, maybe not it's 100%, but I am telling you it's 90%. You know what? And this is not also ISIS's right now. This is what they like to do, because they don't want to kill 50. They don't want to kill hundreds or thousands. They are playing big. These are the loose cans fanatics, and they are trying to make noise. But their plan is big. I have terrorist expert friends, many experts. And today, there are more than 5,000 ISIS members lived in the United States. America, every state is a terrorist breeding ground right now. They are in your backyards. They are in your schools. They are in your communities. And you know what? I went to refugee camps in the Middle East. I have seen refugees. I have so much heart for refugees. I sat down, I cried with them. My minister helped the refugees. But it is not the best solution to bring Muslim refugees to the United States, because some of them are victims, and I was a victim. I had PTSD. I saw killings on the streets. I was beaten up by a Muslim man. I fled to America for my life. I know what I am talking about. I know Quran and what Quran says about infidels. And when I say infidels, this is not only a threat to Christians. Every non-Muslim is under this threat.
Anyway, like any set of ideas, Islam is like a religion. As any set of ideas, it deserves to be scrutinized. Well, I have scrutinized it, and I have found it wanting. I have found it lacking. Everywhere there is Islam, you will find women oppressed. Everywhere there is Islam, you will find... You're wearing a hijab in the United States of America. What is wrong with you? You see, They want to shout you down by saying, oh, what about me? I'm not so oppressed. Well, let's move on from women. If you don't care about female genital mutilation, don't care about forced marriages, don't care about acid thrown in the faces of your Islamic sisters, if you don't care about any of those things, fine. Let's talk about gays instead. In 12 Islamic countries, I could be killed for my sexuality. Is that okay? 100 million people live in countries where it is illegal to be homosexual. All of those countries are Islamic. This is not an ISIS thing. You know, you will see gays being thrown off the roof in ISIS-controlled territories. But this has nothing to do with terrorism. This is mainstream Muslim culture. Your religion does it everywhere your religion exists. It is a threat, an existential threat to gay people. Everywhere in the world there is Islam. You will find women oppressed, homosexuals murdered, you will find gang rape. Now there's a unique phenomenon that doesn't really exist outside of Islamic cultures, of familial gang rape, where fathers, brothers and cousins go out raping people together. It happened in Rotherham in the UK. And the liberal establishment in the UK didn't investigate this because according to a government report, not a far right-wing blog, according to a government report, 1,400 young girls were raped in racially or religiously, as you choose to define it, motivated crimes because both the police and the authorities were too scared of being called racist to intervene. And this pattern repeats itself everywhere there is mass Muslim immigration. My suggestion to you, America, is that you don't need it here. Learn your lesson from 9/11. Learn your lesson from Orlando. These socially regressive, see, they walk out when they don't like the facts. These socially regressive attitudes, of Muslims in the West are horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. The surveys show that 52% of British Muslims think that my sex life should be made illegal. 39% of them. Why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? Don't you want to talk about numbers? Are you embarrassed? Are you embarrassed? Are you embarrassed of the hateful culture that surrounds your religion, that oppresses women and murders homosexuals and commits unspeakable acts of terrorism? Are you ashamed of it? Would you like to talk to us about why there's no global Muslim peace movement?
Certainly, Muslims coming to live in Britain and in Western Europe enjoy more rights and better rights, among them freedom of worship, than they do in any Islamic country in the earth here today. We do have a problem. We have a problem when the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies, come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, their intolerance of minorities, other religious minorities, sexual minorities, their intolerance of gays, their dislike and distrust of half of the population, women, and many, many other things. And the call, what's more, for a parallel legal system within Britain and European societies. This is monstrous. No other group behaves like this, asks for parallel laws. This is a fundamental problem, and it's one we're going to have to deal with. It's a problem between a society, Western Europe, that believes that laws are based on reason, and Islam that believes that they are based on revelation. Between these two ideas, I'm not sure there is very much compromise for Europe. It is not Europe that has let down its Muslims, but the Muslims of Europe that have let down Europe. This is not solely something which we have to say we can never reconcile. Of course we can reconcile this, but we need to be honest about it. We need to be frank about it, and we cannot avoid things just because they are unpleasant. And if there were one thing I would wish Muslims in Europe could learn today, as fast as possible, it would be this: that you have no right in this society not to be offended. You have no right to say that because you don't like something you can commit violence, or you would like something to be stopped or censored. You have no right to have more hate laws or hate crime laws or hate speech laws just to defend Islam. You have to realize, the Muslims of Europe have to realize, that a society in which even your deepest feelings can be trodden upon is the only society worth living in. And the sooner we can learn that, the sooner that Islam can learn that within Europe, the better. It is not Europe that has failed its Muslims. It is Islam that has failed Europe. I'd argue Islam has failed its Muslims. Thank you.
Just a comment to you, what you said about women. I think, first of all, that's really misleading because you're getting culture confused with religion. And if you just take a moment to look into the Quran, you'll see the Quran gave women rights long before women in Europe started burning bras for their own rights. And you'll also see that actually in the Quran it encourages women to seek education, it protects us from violence, and it actually gives us rights in marriage.
All right, okay.
So you're very wrong.
Your closing statements.
Thank you. Well, first of all, just to pick up on a couple of people, particularly women, who've said about the terrific things that Islam gives women in terms of rights. The first thing is, yes, in 7th century Arabia, some of this was progressive. In 21st century Britain, it is not. And you have to make that fundamental admission that the Quran is not a document for women's rights in Europe in 2010. It is not. Secondly, why is it that only Islamic societies and mosques in this country are places which teach and preach hatred of other minorities? Every single week in this country, there are people on campuses who teach the murder of minorities. Last week, it was somebody who calls for the murder of apostates. The week before, at another university, it was somebody who believes the Jews are fair game. This is not tolerable. It is not tolerable for Muslims. It is not tolerable from anyone else. You, I hope, would agree with me that any minority that engaged in such hatred and bigotry should be criticized. Don't pretend that the cloak of Islam and Islamic belief and religious fervor means that people like us cannot say that people who call for the murder of minorities are not mainstream, are not acceptable, and have to be critiqued.
So Europe is failing its Muslims. Against have won Douglas Murray and Fleming Rose. Congratulations to you.